They thought it was over. They thought when they walked away, that was the end of me. They thought the silence would crush me, that the abandonment would finish what life had already started. They didn't just leave, they left me for dead. And that's where they made their biggest mistake. Because I didn't die, I transformed. I didn't stay down. I studied the dirt. I didn't break. I became something you can't break again. Pain didn't kill me. It clarified me. Their absence wasn't my ending. It was my awakening. Because there's something dangerous about a person who gets left with nothing. They realize they don't need anything. They took their love, their loyalty, their promises, and they took my doubt with them. They took the last bit of hope I had in anyone outside myself, and I'm grateful. Because now, there's no confusion, no hesitation, no waiting on anyone. I don't expect, I don't beg, I don't chase. I create. You don't survive being left for dead unless you learn to dig your own way out. And that's what I did. Bare hands, bloody knuckles, silent rage. Every step since then has been built with fire. Every breath is a reminder that I'm still here, and that should terrify them. They thought they could walk away from me like I was disposable, like I was just another chapter in their story. But what they didn't realize is that I was the turning point, the pivot, the plot twist. You don't leave someone for dead and then sleep peacefully. Not when that someone comes back louder, sharper, and completely untouchable. I used to want them to come back. I used to play scenarios in my mind where they'd regret it, apologize, fix it. But that was before I realized their exit was the best gift I'd ever receive. Because when people leave you for dead, you have a choice. Stay buried or become the earthquake. They buried me in doubt. I grew in darkness. They forgot me like a whisper. I came back like thunder. Every lie they told me built my foundation. Every disappointment cemented my focus. They didn't just leave, they built a legend without realizing it. And when you rise from that, you don't rise soft. You don't rise looking for closure. You don't rise trying to be understood. You rise ruthless. You rise with a vision so clear, it burns anyone who stands too close. And you never, ever let them close again. They'll watch from a distance now, and that's where they belong. Behind the line, past the fire, outside the circle. They gave up their seat when they gave up on me. There's no return. No rebuild, no reconnect. I'm not bitter, I'm beyond. I'm not angry, I'm ascended. I don't need their apologies, I don't need their explanations. I needed them then, and they weren't there. That's all the information I'll ever require. Loyalty is proven in silence, in absence, in darkness, and they failed that test. So I stopped asking why. I stopped wondering how they could. I stopped carrying their names like scars. Now I carry my own name like armor. Now I speak to my reflection like a soldier. Because that's what surviving makes you. Hard, focused, dangerous. You don't come back from being left for dead as the same person. You come back as the reckoning. You don't learn who you are until you're alone with nothing but the sound of your own breathing. Until you've sat in the silence left behind by everyone who swore they'd never leave, until you've had to carry yourself through nights so heavy you thought the sun would never rise again. That's where I found myself, not in success, not in celebration, but in abandonment. They left me thinking I'd stay broken, thinking I'd fade out quietly, disappear without a fight. But I don't fade, I evolve. I don't vanish, I become the storm. You can't leave someone like me for dead and expect to walk away without consequence. I may have been buried, but I became my own resurrection. I dug myself out with my bare hands. No help, no applause, just grit, just rage, just the unshakable belief that if I could make it through this alone, I'd never need another hand again. That's where true power lives, not in popularity, not in love, in solitude, in fire, in refusal. You learn a lot when people leave you in pieces. You learn who was real. You learn how fast promises can die. And most of all, you learn how to rebuild without blueprints. You stop relying on their maybes. You stop wishing they had stayed. And you start becoming everything they were too weak to imagine you'd become. I became ruthless, not because I wanted to, but because they gave me no other option. I became silent because the noise was always a lie. I became focused. Because every distraction had a name, and I deleted them all. You don't heal soft when you've been left for dead. You heal like a warrior, bleeding, crawling, screaming until you can stand again. And when you finally stand, something changes forever. You don't go back. You don't rebuild bridges that burned themselves. You don't reach for hands that let you fall. You stop explaining, stop justifying, stop trying to make people see what they chose to be blind to. You become a one-man army, and that's when they start to notice. That's when they want to come back, but they don't get to. Not now, not ever. This version of me doesn't make room for ghosts, doesn't feed what left me starving, doesn't pour into people who once watched me drown. They want access. They should have stayed when it cost nothing. Now the price is too high. Now they can only watch from a distance. They say you changed. Of course I did. Pain changes people. Silence changes people. Abandonment doesn't just hurt, it reprograms you. And I'm not ashamed of the shift. I'm proud of it. I earned this mindset with every tear that dried alone, with every plan that failed without support, with every door that closed while I knocked with hope. I don't walk the same. I don't talk the same. I don't need what I used to need. Because when you've died emotionally and had to rebirth yourself without help, you stop asking for comfort. You start demanding greatness from yourself. You start waking up with fire, with purpose, with a vision so sharp it cuts through every excuse. And if they left me for dead, that's on them. But the fact that I'm still here, that's on me. They didn't just walk away. They turned their backs with a smile. Like I deserved the fall, like I was meant to stay buried. They thought the silence would cripple me, that the absence would shatter what was left of my spirit. But what they forgot is that you don't need noise to build a fire. Sometimes all it takes is a spark, and they lit it when they left. I used to carry the pain like a wound, like something I needed to hide. But now, I carry it like a weapon, a reminder, a truth etched in my bones. Every time I wanted to quit, I remembered their faces. Every time I thought about falling again, I remembered the way they watched me struggle and did nothing. That's not something you forget. That's something you use. I didn't get stronger because I wanted to. I got stronger because I had to. Because no one was coming. No one was reaching. No one was holding on when I slipped. So I built myself into someone who doesn't slip, who doesn't need holding, who doesn't flinch in the face of another goodbye. You learn to stop begging for help when you've had to heal alone. You learn to stop asking for love when you've learned to fill that void with progress. I don't need their apology. I am the closure. I don't need their explanation. I've seen enough. I don't want their return. I've outgrown their absence. Every morning I wake up, I remember they thought I wouldn't, that I'd stay down, that I'd fade away, that the weight would crush me into silence. And that's why I grind. That's why I focus. That's why I move like a man with nothing to lose, because I already lost what was never meant to stay. Let them watch. Let them whisper. Let them wonder how I got here without them. The answer is simple. I stopped needing them. I stopped believing they were the key. I stopped giving them credit for my survival when they had nothing to do with it. I rose on my own, with grit, with fury, with a soul that refused to be buried. You know what happens when you're left for dead? You stop caring about the rules. You stop playing their game. You start writing your own code. One built on relentlessness. One built on silence, sacrifice, and the sickening knowledge that the only person who'll never leave you is you. That's where power lives, not in their applause, not in their validation, in the mirror, in the sweat, in the pain that becomes progress, in the nights where it's just you and your doubt, and you choose to keep going anyway. That's the rise. That's the real comeback. I'm not motivated by revenge. That's too small. I'm motivated by the life I refuse to let them steal from me. I'm motivated by the silence I turned into strategy. I'm motivated by every night I didn't quit, when quitting would have been easy. That's where my ruthlessness comes from. So let them regret it. Let them pretend they didn't know what they were doing. Let them talk about how much I changed. Because I did. I had to. They left me for dead, and I left them in the past. You know what I learned in the silence they left behind? That survival isn't pretty, that healing isn't gentle, that there's a version of you that only comes out when you've been broken beyond recognition. That version doesn't smile to be liked, doesn't wait to be picked, doesn't ask twice. That version builds, bleeds, and burns until the old you is unrecognizable. I became that version. Not overnight, not in a burst of glory, but in the quiet, in the isolation, in the moments where everything inside me said, "Stay down." And I whispered back, "Watch me." You don't understand strength until you've had to carry pain alone, until you've had to be your own motivation, until you've had to breathe through disappointment and still keep moving. They left me at my lowest, and that's the part they'll never say out loud. They left me when I had nothing but hope, when I still believed they'd come back, when I still believed I was worth fighting for. But that's what pain does. It forces you to stop wishing and start working. It forces you to stop waiting for a lifeline and become one, and I did. Every brick they threw became part of my foundation. Every word they said behind my back became my war cry. Every doubt they cast on my name became a proof point I swore I'd turn into power. And now, I don't want them back. I want them to see what they missed while they watched me bleed. You don't get to walk away from the wreckage and then show up when it's beautiful. You don't get to vanish in the battle and expect a throne in the victory. I don't hate them. They're not worth that kind of energy. But I remember, not out of bitterness, but out of boundaries. Not out of anger, but out of accuracy. Because let's be clear, I don't rise to prove them wrong. I rise because I proved myself right. I rise because the only voice I listen to now is my own. And that voice doesn't beg, it doesn't doubt, it doesn't break, it roars with focus, with purpose, with pain refined into precision. They say let it go. But what they really mean is forget it ever happened, and I won't. Because what they did shaped me, molded me, strengthened me in ways love never could. Their absence taught me presence. Their silence taught me strategy. Their disrespect taught me discipline. Now I walk different. I talk different. I breathe fire where I used to gasp for air. I make moves where I used to make excuses. And every room I step into, I bring that same ruthless energy. The kind you earn when you've been left for dead and came back leading armies. They gave up on me thinking I'd give up on myself, but I didn't, and I never will. I don't want their sympathy. I don't want their texts. I don't want their "how have you been" messages that come after seeing me rise. If you couldn't handle me at rock bottom, you don't deserve a glimpse of me at my peak. If you could leave me for dead, you don't get to celebrate the fact that I'm still breathing. Let them watch. Let them pretend like they didn't know. Like they didn't walk away when I needed them most. Like they didn't silence their phones while I cried out for help. I don't need them to acknowledge it. My growth screams loud enough. My wins echo in their silence. My strength shouts over their excuses. This world tried to bury me under every lie, every failure, every person who promised and disappeared. But I don't stay buried. I don't stay quiet. I don't stay broken. I rise, and not softly. I rise with the kind of vengeance that doesn't speak. It executes. I live with fire in my chest now. Fire that doesn't flicker. Fire that doesn't dim for anyone. I don't care if you're uncomfortable. I'm not shrinking again. I'm not softening for spaces that can't handle my heat. I was left for dead. So now I move like a man who's already seen the end and chose to rewrite it. They thought I'd die without them. Instead, I died to the version of me that needed them. That's the version they'll never meet again. Because what lives now is ruthless, focused, grounded, solid as steel and twice as sharp. I don't want applause. I don't want recognition. I want results. I want impact. I want to drain every drop of potential from this life until the dirt takes me back. And when that day comes, when they lower me into the ground, I won't be full of dreams. I won't be heavy with regret. I'll be empty. Empty because I gave it all. I took the pain. I took the loss. I took the silence, the abandonment, the loneliness, and I turned it into purpose. They left me for dead. I left them in the dust, and I never looked back.